you, Captain America, to help me rebuild the Avengers.
The Avengers?
If you could build your own Avengers team, who would you draft?
Well, you'd have to get the Hulk because it's the Incredible Hulk.
Right.
I've always been a fan of Wanda, Scarlet Witch. I feel like her powers are amazing. I wouldn't want too many people. I wouldn't want like 35 Avengers.
Right.
Like a solid 5 count would be good. I would have to bring, Danny the Falcon, because he's my man. Yeah. But the last one would be Professor Xavier. Yeah, he got the mind power. He has the tutelage, the guidance. Yeah. I've always loved Professor Xavier.
And I will always be there.
When I think of the time it takes to go out and actually do a mission, I would pick people that I could hang out with, because they don't talk about this, but the length of van rides to go from one mission to another, or a plane ride, like, you're gonna spend a lot of time with these people. So I think I'd go Spider-Man,
yeah,
Deadpool and Wolverine, just because pairing them and then having Captain America, that dynamic would be an absolute show. That would be an absolute show. And yeah, by the time that we get to the mission, we'd either want to beat each other up or like just be a tight unit.
I waited a long time for this team up.
What was those conversations like, building that dynamic between you and Harrison Ford?
It's a thing of like mutual respect and understanding and acknowledgement of another person's craft. Like Harrison has a certain way he likes to work.
Yeah.
I have a certain way I like to work.
Yeah.
And Harrison was so open to the idea of meeting with me halfway on that we really bonded in the way of, looking at the other person and allowing that person to be and meeting them halfway.
Wow.
And it was really great. I mean, It was an experience that you couldn't afford to pay for.
Well, he's a very formidable presence as Captain America and as an actor to work with. He's obviously very serious about what he does, very capable, and his enthusiasm for it is palpable. And it was a great pleasure to work with him and other members of the cast. Marvel really, in my mind, does a remarkable job of bringing actors into their world, making them comfortable doing things that they've never done before. And when I looked at it, I said, I haven't done that. Maybe there's a place for me to have some fun. Work with me, Sam.
The empathy that Sam has for Isaiah, what does that inform the viewer of this version of Captain America?
The words that kept coming back between Julius and I were empathy and compassion. Every day, that was something we drilled into this character, because when we first met Sam, he was a counselor. He was actually a member of the airborne that's on this actual base that we sit, right? So it takes a certain type of person to be a counselor. You have to have a certain type of dignity and humanity about you to put yourself aside and help someone in the most complex way to deal with their problems. Yeah. So that level of humanity, that level of compassion, that's what we wanted to shine through in this movie with this character, because he didn't take the serum. So he can't fight his way through all of his problems. Sometimes he has to think and be considerate of the person across from him and what they've been through.
And it's his superpower, I love the idea of leaning into a superpower that isn't necessarily a conventional superpower that we expect, that it's an aspirational superpower that we all have a capacity for. And the fact that Sam is somebody who's driven by this desire to connect with people, to protect people, to see the good in each other, it became very interesting when you take somebody like that and you put them in a paranoid or political thriller that's all about mistrust. Yeah. So now he has to mistrust those around him and the institutions around him. He's opposite of President Ross, who was once Secretary of State Ross, who put him in prison, who divided the Avengers with Sokovia Accords. So now this guy has to question himself. This guy, and Sam, has to see past his blind spots to be able to navigate this very difficult situation. And that becomes the engine of this movie as a thriller. It becomes a test of his superpower, but ultimately it's the opportunity to define him as our new Captain America.
You may be Captain America, but you're not Steve Rogers.
You're right. I'm not.
You've played characters who challenge authority in different ways. How does joining the MCU as Sidewinder fit into that pattern of questioning power structures?
I'm really a renegade in many ways, not only in how I deal with my career and look at things, but also in the choices I make as an actor. I try to be on the edge of things. So to me, this is a great coupling of challenging what the authority is and who the authority is within this particular movie. You know, I'm playing a guy who is a former, in our comic, which I draw a lot from, a former economics professor. Whether he is in this incarnation or not remains to be seen, but I use that to give me a clue. He's a very smart, intelligent guy. But coupled with that, he's very physical, and he's able to get things done, but he's also practical in many ways. So the questions in our film are about betrayal, about political warfare, about minerals and how we get them for our people to be able to sustain ourselves. And so Sidewinder's big question is, who is in charge? You know, who's in charge of all this? And do you believe them?
The mix of negative drivers and positive drivers are there in every one of our lives. We have the instincts to be good. We also have the opportunities to not be good and get away with things. This story reveals the things that we try to hide about ourselves, the Hulk within, as it were.
You're now the Falcon. You have this newfound responsibility. Where is Torres' mentality at the top of this film?
Well, yeah, I think he's eager and ready to prove himself. One, he's living his dream. He's partnering up with his hero while all the events of Endgame and Infinity Wars, they were all happening. Joaquin was somewhere watching it on TV. And so to finally be able to be in some of that action, I think he's willing to, one, prove his worth and why he should be Captain America's like wingman.
Yeah.
And there is a responsibility that he admires that Captain America carries.
Yeah.
And I think as someone that wants that responsibility, I see that same energy in how Joaquin is written and how Julius really sculpted parts of those scenes. And so he's basically screaming, "Coach, put me in.
Yeah.
Put me in, I got this."
You know, the Shield holds such an iconic status. What new fighting styles and techniques were you excited to bring to this Shield?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw the Wakandan wings, man.
Right.
And I'm like, it's go time.
Yeah. My stunt double, his name is David Warren. He's like a flipping mechanical expert, Bruce Lee master. So what we wanted to do was really bring more of a core additive to Sam Wilson, make him more flexible, make him more buoyant, give him more of an ability to push the suit to its max. That was something that we talked about. It's like, look, we got these wings, we have a shield, we have a suit fresh out of Wakanda. Why wouldn't we go as far as we could with these action sequences? Like, do something no one's ever seen before, you know? And that was one of the focal points when we're doing the choreography for the stunt and action sequences.
Yeah, when they mentioned Wakanda, I was like, if there's a world where Sam can be in Wakanda or show up in another Black Panther film, I'm like, what is that gonna look like? Is that something you even thought about at all?
No, I mean, look, when I was in Ant-Man, they called me, 3 days before and asked me to come out and do that cameo.
Oh, wow.
When I was in Age of Ultron, I didn't know that until like 2 weeks before I went to set. So a lot of these scripts are moving and shifting parts that we're trying to put together and get right. So unless you're like one of the main guys, they can pull anybody in and make you a part of it.
As a producer of the Black Panther films, I have to ask, could there be more Wakandan collaboration in the future? Is that even a possibility?
I mean, potentially, but you have to think Wakanda's very precious with their resources. They don't just give it to anybody. So I think it says something that they believe enough to Sam Wilson to give him this technology. Because they're not trying to trade with America. They don't trust everybody outside of their borders, but there's something special about this Captain America that they go, we're gonna support him. And I think that's kind of an interesting commentary, you know?
I saw that and I was like, this is, the wheels are going off.
Sure.
The future is bright. There is still time, you know? The chemistry between you and Anthony is so palpable on screen, my friend. Behind the scenes, though, what are you two talking about to build that dynamic?
Oh, we're talking all day.
Yeah.
We're talking all day. It's just pure smack talk. No, there's we have a lot of similarities, and the differences we have are also really awesome. So I think we build on that through playful jousting of smack talking, but also whether it's talking about football or he gives me a lot of advice on real estate recently. So I'm like, okay, let me, the tycoon himself, Anthony Mackie. So we're just an easy hang. I've had the privilege of being able to, from having roommates in Calvin Harrison Jr. to Lewis Pullman, watch people in further parts in their career and then just kind of be able to hang with them as friends, and through that, like, learn how it would be for me if I ever get that situation. But I think he's understood that, and he's kind of just led by example, which is kind of awesome. And so I've been blessed that in almost every project I've done, there's a great person I could just look up to and just kind of pick their brain or just see how they move in the world.
How early did Thaddeus Ross come in this story?
Pretty early. So, one of the runs we took a bit of our cues from, to be honest, was Steve Englehart's Secret Empire from 1974. In that run, the president turns out to be corrupt. It's an allegory for Watergate, but it was about Captain America realizing that the halls of power maybe weren't supportive of him. And we lacked that idea of a guy named Captain America, now a black man, finding himself at loggerheads with a new president. President characters I find to be kind of boring in cinema, but we knew we had Thaddeus Ross on this trajectory where there was already some built-in understanding of who he was as a character, where becoming president would sort of force him to face some of the sins of his past. And frankly, putting Cap and the president on a collision course felt really good to us. And so it was very early in the process. And then it's about building out an architecture for the story that forces both of these men to figure out if either of these new mantles they've taken on, if they're worthy of them.
Tonight is the first step towards lasting peace across this great new world.
You've had several iconic on-screen face-offs with lead characters throughout your career. What makes this dynamic with Anthony's Captain America different or interesting from your perspective?
I've known Anthony a long time, and I knew him many years ago in New York theater, and we passed by each other, and I kind of get a hint of his personality, and I think he's a very good reader of people. And I know I'm an excellent reader of people. So therefore, we realized, to come at it as complete combatants would be to be leaving something behind. And so I always, in my brain, when I'm working with him, it's such a pleasure to work with him that I can't forget I like him, right? So even as Sidewinder, I want to portray, this guy's cool, this guy's all right, I'm gonna kill him, but he's good, And so that likability factor that he exudes in terms of his charismatic nature and personality, I took in and used to be in concert with him. So I would like to be able to portray in some elements of this film that we're old friends who meet again who were on the wrong side.
Captain America. Caught without his wings.
Who is your favorite on-screen co-star in the MCU?
The person that's my favorite, I've probably had the most fun with, it would have to be Chris Evans.
Don't say it. Don't you say it.
Left.
Come on!
And don't get me wrong, I love Hemsworth. I love hanging out with Hemsworth. Hemsworth is a legend.
We love him.
He's a legend in my eyes. But, Chris and I kind of have this honest, simple, easy friendship. And, it's one of those things where you don't see somebody for a year, you come back and talk to them, and it's like no time has passed, And that's what's so fun, that's what's so cool about it. So I would have to say Evans. If not him, I would have to say Don Cheadle. I hang with Don, and Don's one of those people that is so smart that he just makes you feel not smart.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I love hanging out with Don and just hearing his stories and, bouncing knowledge and information off him. It's crazy,
Yeah.
I was watching the trailer for Loose over and over and over, and then going back to the Captain America trailer, you really have a singular voice when it comes to this genre. As a director, what kind of creative style did you want to put on this Marvel movie?
Oh, that's a great question. There's a real continuity from Loose to this film. Everything from how the camera is utilized. I wanted very controlled camera, very specific framing, very specific camera movement. There's no use of handheld. That makes you sort of locked in and focused and kind of a little bit uneasy as well as you're navigating the thriller of it all. There's a paranoia element to this. So also the music, there's subtle uses of electronics. Laura Cartman, who did the score, really listened to some of the inspirations that I wanted to bring on board musically and sonically. So all that is a part of it. Color as well. I like to call it punchy naturalism. So there's a use of color and texture in this film. We use C-series lenses, we applied grain, we gave halation, gate weave, all these things that give you a very cinematic feel, because I wanted to honor and kind of connect this to old classic political and paranoid thrillers, movies like Point Blank, movies like Day of the Jackal, the Alan Pakula trilogy. And there were a few contemporary films as well that I was looking at. Killing of a Sacred Deer and the use of negative space and lots of headroom, and then also the lighting of a movie like The Great Beauty, the chiaroscuro lighting schemes. So all those things were brought to bear in a way that I thought would make this a singular Captain America film and Sam Wilson film and put you on edge.
I feel like Julius is so good with character that it really put me in a position where Captain America became an actual person. You know, you see the humanity in Sam Wilson in this movie like you haven't seen before, and that's directly because of Julius and the little things that he changed to humanize Sam Wilson.
Like what, for example?
So, prime example, there's a, well, I can't say that. There's his interaction with Ross. Instead of being combative with Ross, like, you know, Ross and Sam Wilson have a history because he broke them all up with the Sokovia Accords. And Sam Wilson don't trust him at all, but he's willing to listen.
Right.
And you see him take that beat, that moment, listening, and take his thoughts into consideration. There's a certain level of patience and understanding that comes along with that. And it was little things like that where Julius would say, okay, just give it a beat and really hear him and then reply. Because it makes the character more thoughtful when you see him listen, then respond.
You don't have to give me an answer now. Just think about it.
What is something Anthony is giving you advice for? You know, just the realities of being on a Marvel set.
It was one of my first days. He pulled me to the side, and maybe the only time he's pulled me to the side to give me advice, outside of just like leading by example. But this time he said, the MCU and everyone that works in it has been working on it for a long time.
Yeah.
And this is like a family, from the gaffer to the props to obviously every creative that's throwing down story. He's like, this is like a theater troupe. And so that was basically my lesson, was like, this is a team, know your role within it. And for Captain America Brave New World, it was even cooler to watch him in an even bigger leadership position as Captain America and really establishing this free culture on set.
Yeah.
And from seeing him crack jokes at 8 in the morning and realizing, okay, it's gonna be a fun day.
Right.
And that honestly is where I attribute some of the comedic moments that I have in the film, was because earlier on in that day, he did a 5 to 10 minute stand-up routine that I was like, all right, cool, I could send it. He already made a fool of himself. I could make a fool of myself too. And so these are little things that you don't necessarily think about when you think about what makes someone feel loose and free on set.
Yeah.
It's just how much permission and leeway is instilled within the culture of that film production.
Tell me I don't make your old gear look brand new. Who's saying that? Everybody. Everybody is saying that.
Danny would come to set every day like with this excitement, with this appreciation, with this love of the craft and being there on set. And it really humbled me because it made me remember when I was his age and I felt the same way. And I always tell people, you know, just enjoy it.
Right on.
Like when we were shooting, Harrison told me, you know, you did the work, kid, you deserve it. You know, and you have to, at some point in time, step back, look at the situation you're in and go, holy moly,
right.
I did it.